All right. Welcome, everybody in the Second Shift community. It's Jenny Galuzzo here. I'm joined by Marissa Lonick, who is both a Second Shift member and also a Second Shift client, which puts her in a really interesting position, having had both sides of our ecosystem. And we are so excited because Marissa is a mom of 4. She has twins who are 7, then a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and none of them are currently in school. Yet she also has a practice, a blog, and her own business called Mama Work It. And she just launched a new product, which is all about organization and being as organized as a working parent as you can, which, just like sort of side note, I think is funny. I am like a huge planner person. I still have like my file of facts from high school. And it used to be a huge sticking point between me and Gina and Kemp, who would think that it was like they wanted to burn my planner because they thought I was disorganized in my scheduling. So I learned how to use the Google Calendar very reluctantly, but I still keep my planner because I think it's a great way to keep yourself organized. I now make lists with it and I just like love it. It makes me feel like super happy. Anyway, Marissa, I want to let you run with this and do your presentation, but I'd just love to know from you, like what inspired the planner, and are you also like a tactile planner person?
So I am pretty digital when it comes to maintaining a daily schedule in that sense, but I do feel like taking a few minutes the night before to just kind of think through some crucial things that you need to absolutely get done the next day, and I limit mine to 3, is key. And so that is part of the planner, the journal planner that I developed. It's developing, a 10 to 15 minute night before habit of just kind of reflecting on the day and planning for the next day. And the mantra there is kind of, when you feel good, you do good. So you are able to be more productive. You're able to kind of live your best life if you're able to really just, reflect on the day and think ahead toward the next one and just set some, 3 goals that you can hit that day.
3 goals that you can hit that day. I feel like I'm really failing at that right now. I feel like what's hard is that, look, you have 4 kids, you have a full-time job, and you also have this business on the side. So clearly you are a very organized and efficient person. I usually feel that way about myself in life, but in this current moment, every day feels like the same day. So it's kind of like if you don't have hard and fast deadlines, I feel like you can push, those can become very blurry very fast. We're like, what's the difference between today or tomorrow? It's all the same day. And there's so many other things that are so difficult right now that the priority of the things that you're setting for yourself can get lost in like doctor's appointments and having to get COVID tests and, trying to figure out if you need more toilet paper.
Absolutely. And I'm not organized and efficient every day. I'll just say that. Absolutely not. And that's why I need this tool. But the goals are not huge, right? Like they can be so tiny and small and just, again, help you stay focused and kind of, get some crucial things done, even if they're tiny and kind of insignificant in a way. But at least it keeps you, keeps it top of mind.
All right. So what we're going to do for this is, I know you have a presentation, so we'll go through that, and then we'll leave time at the end for Q&A. So if people have, tips or advice or want to find out more about your blog and the organizer, we can go to that part at the end.
Great. That sounds awesome. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen.
I'm going to mute myself so you don't hear me.
Okay, so you guys should be able to see that. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and dive in. Thank you so much again, Jenny, for having me. I have loved working with the second shift as both an employer, and a member over the past few years. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity today to share some of the tips and ideas I've learned over the past 8 months with other working mom members of the second shift. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, I want to take a quick minute and tell you about me. Not because I love talking about myself, but I want to give you a little background on who I am and why I feel slightly qualified to speak to you today about this topic. So I have spent the last 14 years of my career in corporate America in areas of learning and development, operational management, customer experience, and sales and growth strategy. I am a wife to one and a mom to four, all boys. And I don't know if that makes a difference, but I do think communicating with the opposite sex sometimes can be more challenging. So I'm going to just throw that in there. My boys, as you can see in this picture, are 7, 7, 3, and 1. They're little guys there. And I've also been an entrepreneur for the last 3 years for my business, Mama Work It, where I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. I'm the author of Time Management, How to Get the Time You Need to Do the Things You Want, the creator of How to Work from Home with Kids During a Pandemic online course, where I dive deeper into some of the topics I'm going to cover today. And most recently, the creator of Word to Your Mother, a mama's guide to journal today and slay tomorrow. So time management, goal strategy, and mom life are kind of my thing. All right, so now that you know who you're talking to, let's dive into the world we're living. But before we get there, I want to do a quick visualization of where we were pre-COVID, if you can even remember. I know you probably felt like this woman in the drawing here, pulled in many directions. But I think when you look back at this time, you also felt like you had it together. You had a routine, school, work, childcare, date night, whatever that was. You were living in a very fast-paced and busy world. It was often chaotic, but it was controlled chaos. Kind of, you knew what to expect most of the time, and you felt most importantly in control. Then what happened? March 2020 hit, and it was like, WTF. All of a sudden, you don't have it together. Routine, what the hell is that? It's more like survival. Even though everything got canceled, you're still so busy. But this is like a completely different busy. You now feel like you have a total lack of control, and maybe you're just trying to get back to normal. A time when you weren't accessorizing your outfits with a matching mask, or you didn't religiously leave your house without hand sanitizer. Okay, I actually always left my house with hand sanitizer, but I definitely wasn't using it as frequently as I do now. But basically, you're like, get me out of here and get me back to normal. But that brings me to my next point here. What even is normal anymore? Well, it's not what it was. It's not running from school drop-off to activity, to the office, to client meetings. And thankfully, it's not the insanity and anxiety that we all felt in March when things got started with the pandemic. The thing we felt and hoped was just a very temporary thing for us. It's sort of like this new place that none of us have ever been before. And the bottom line is, even if we don't like it, we need to embrace it and make it work for us, because it's been here for 8 months now. And while yes, it's still temporary in some ways, like we'll get a vaccine eventually and schools will reopen and masks won't be required and we'll be able to hug friends and family in real life and not over Zoom. It needs to be looked at as the new normal that isn't going anywhere for the time being. And this new normal is a mix of things we were doing before and things we need to do now. It doesn't need to be one extreme or the other. And most importantly, it shouldn't be regarded as a rest stop on your way back to Normalville, USA. It's your current city, where you live, and where you intend to stay for a while. So I am all about taking action and having a plan to get there. So when we're talking about this new normal, I want to break it down for you on what I actually mean when I say that you can thrive in this versus just survive in it. So the first step I say is accept the situation. This is not working from home with kids. This is working from home with kids during a pandemic. There are many added layers to this situation that make it nearly impossible. Yes, there are school closures. There is a lack of childcare. There's your own concern regarding the health of your family and yourself. There's the stress of keeping up at work. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that maybe this pandemic has affected your industry in some way, whether that be a negative way with pay cuts or layoffs or additional work to kind of pivot your previous product or service, or a more positive way of higher demand. Maybe work for Zoom. I'm sure their stock is through the roof right now, but maybe they're expecting more of you and you're growing faster than you may be able to keep up because your attention is now being divided amongst other roles you previously didn't have to play in your life, like homeschool teacher, for example. You need to fully understand that what's happening right now is not something you can control. What you can control is how you respond to it. And once you accept that, you're going to feel a lot better and be able to execute a lot more. The second step here is to treat it with permanence. So I touched on this slightly in my previous slide, and I'll elaborate here because for me, this was a turning point in how I responded toward the situation at hand. Early on in this pandemic, I kept telling myself, this is temporary. It was kind of like my coping mechanism to get through each day. And now I think that's a fair way to manage things when you're in survival mode, because you need to remember that this will not be forever. Like, you ever tell yourself, this too shall pass when you're going through a hard time? It's kind of like that. But the thing is, until I started looking around at things as a more permanent part of my life right now, I felt immobilized to move forward. It's kind of like telling yourself you'll start tomorrow or on Monday when you're thinking about changing your diet or starting an exercise routine. Have you done that before? You can't keep waiting for something to change to take action. Treating the current situation with permanence gives you permission to do things and no longer live in this limbo period of putting everything on hold. So if you've been telling yourself you'll start eating healthier after the stress of the pandemic has passed, stop and start today. If you've been waiting until the pandemic passes to job hunt, don't. I guarantee if the right opportunity comes along, you will find a way to make it work for you. And that brings me to step 3, which is develop a plan. So now that you've done the work in the mindset area, you can actually move forward with a plan of action to get there. I don't know about you, but I am such a doer. I always like to just kind of dive in and get it done. And the thing is, you won't be motivated to do anything, even if you're a total doer like me, if your head isn't in the right space. So once you've got steps 1 and 2 down, now you can start brainstorming and really thinking about actual ways to pivot and execute and accomplish what you need to do. And this is where you see people pivoting and making this pandemic really work for them. This is where a friend of mine who is a photographer and couldn't go out and do in-person photo shoots for a while started selling silhouette art to her customers. This is where another local business I follow here that was an art studio started selling home art kits for kids who were learning from home and parents who needed relief and projects for their kids to do. This is where your superwoman creativity and resilience really comes to life. So here is a very high-level example of this philosophy put into practice. Number 1, my daycare is closed or at capacity with new regulations. This is a fact, one I'm fully believing. I am accepting this truth. Number 2, I am not getting a spot in the near future. So I'm not trying to put negative vibes out in the universe by saying this. I'm trying to help you understand, though, if you've been waiting for 8 months for your daycare to reopen and it hasn't happened as of today, you should probably start thinking in the direction that it isn't going to happen anytime soon. And that doesn't mean you stop, emailing the director and asking for updates. It doesn't mean you don't put your name on the waiting list, because we know the squeaky wheel gets the oil. It does mean, though, that you treat the situation you're in with certainty so you can focus your energy on actually making it work for you. And then the third step is, what's the plan, right? I can hire a part-time nanny, or I can juggle childcare with my partner while we both work from home. And this is where you're outlining tangible steps you can take to solve your problem. Whether that's getting on care.com to find a local nanny, or outlining a schedule with your spouse to ensure you're both able to focus on your work when needed and also care for your kid. So now I'm going to take the next few minutes to dive a little deeper on actual ways to make the juggle of working and parenting during the pandemic happen for you. So my first piece of advice is to stop trying to multitask work and childcare. I know this is shocking because you're all probably thinking, yes, of course, that sounds so easy, but also totally impossible in my life. And before you totally write me off, I need to explain this a little bit more. Now, I'm not a fancy schmancy mom who has a team of nannies at my beck and call to watch my kiddos when I need support. I don't even have grandparents on speed dial because they live across the country. So I am no different than likely any of you watching this webinar today. The thing is, your children and your work typically require your full attention because they are both extremely important to you. When you multitask these very important parts of your life, you inevitably feel like a bad parent and a bad employee, because at best, you're giving them 50% each. And most times that's not even true, because you're also probably subconsciously thinking about the laundry that needs to go in the dryer, or the dog that needs to be walked, or whatever else is taking up space in your brain. I know that during this pandemic, there is a lot falling on our shoulders as women, and the multitask seems inevitable. And I will be the first to raise my hand and say that if I didn't multitask daily, my house might fall apart, and I might even fall apart. But what I will say is this: choose wisely what you multitask. My mantra has been pre-COVID, during COVID, and most likely will remain post-COVID: multitask the mindless, solo task the mindful. Multitask things that you can basically do on autopilot: preparing lunches, folding laundry, cleaning up your kitchen. Solo task things that are important to you: research for your latest professional project, reading to your kids, having a conversation with your partner that isn't about the homeschool schedule or a grocery shopping list. Stop trying to multitask the things that are important in your life. Multitask the mindless, solo task the mindful. Okay, my next way to make it happen is to create a daily schedule that works around your non-negotiables. So think kids' Zoom calls, your Zoom calls, a call with a client, etc. Things you can't really move around. Pop these non-negotiables into a daily tracker, kind of like this one. This is just something I created on Excel. And then after that, you can kind of add in your more flexible items, like things that can be on your own time. Think homework help, data analysis, grocery shopping, things that are more flexible. And finally, stick to a routine. This one seems so simple, yet it's something a lot of people don't follow, especially when it was previously being dictated by external factors before the pandemic hit. For example, before COVID, your routine was likely very regimented, with maybe dropping kids off at school or at daycare at a certain time, and then heading into your office or back into your home to start your workday. And in some ways, you were kind of just handed a schedule and you just needed to follow it. But now your routine is really up to you to create. You need to decide the timing and order of events and the operations and the flows. So routine is not only an important thing for your productivity and well-being, it is super important for your kids. Kids thrive on routine and knowing what to expect. So developing even a few things to expect daily in that order or at that time is crucial to make this feel more like the norm and flow more smoothly for you. Okay, another seemingly simple tip, yet often not executed by many, is the mindset shift. So in order to make this work, you need to change your mindset. Now, let me be clear. Do I have days where I think this whole thing like totally sucks? Absolutely. But I also had those days before the pandemic. The pandemic hasn't really changed the fact that I have bad days. Maybe it's given me a few more than 2019. But again, this is more about how you respond to the situation rather than trying to control it. So one quick and easy change you can make in shifting your mindset is this. Switch from saying have to get to. For example, I have to work tonight because I didn't do it earlier versus I get to work tonight because I was able to spend some time earlier this afternoon reading to my son. Some people would kill for the flexibility and family time we are getting right now during this crisis. And again, I'm not saying this is an ideal situation. It isn't. What I am saying though is seeing it for the positive things it is bringing to your life will absolutely help you feel less stuck and more grateful. Wayne Dyer has a famous quote that I like to say anytime I focus on mindset, and it's this: if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So start embracing a get to mindset over a have to one, and you are going to be in a much better space. But Marissa, what about the mom guilt? Okay, so let's spend a quick minute talking about the elephant in the room, because every single mom I've spoken to over the past 8 months has told me she's had several visits from the mom guilt fairy this year, far more than normal. There are a lot of things right now you easily fall into the trap of feeling guilty about, I would think, because you've taken on so many more roles than just being a working mom, which in itself is huge. So maybe now you are also a homeschool teacher. Maybe you're an IT consultant for distance learning. I saw this TikTok video recently where the mom called herself the CMO, the Chief Mute Unmute Officer, for her kids' Zoom calls. And I don't know about you, but I can totally relate. What else? You're the childcare provider, yet you're also still the executive or the consultant. You're still the spouse or partner. You're still all the things you were pre-COVID, with a lot of added roles added into this mix. So the global pandemic has added all that, and even sprinkled in some anxiety and a lot of unknown and that total lack of control, which I know for me is tough. So the first thing I'm going to say is, girl, you need to give yourself a break. You do not need to respond to every email at the same lightning speed you could prior. Your kid can watch an extra TV show so you can have that meeting. I'm not going to tell you to lower your standards, because let's be honest, lowering standards doesn't feel good to many of us overachieving women listening here today. What I am going to tell you though is to change them. We have had to change a lot over the past 8 months, and this in itself is an area that needs to change too. Pre-pandemic, my kids were extremely limited when it came to screen time. I've had to come to terms with the fact that screen time is going to be offered more regularly in my home during this season. Has that come with guilt? Yes, it did. And some days it still does. Has it also saved the day? Every freaking time. I have a whole section in my course entitled "Not All Screens Are Bad," because I think there are plenty of ways Screen time can help you be successful during the current juggle of parenting and working during the pandemic, while not making you feel like the worst parent of the year. Finally, I'm gonna go there with the self-care, but take care of you. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you're not feeling your best, you can't deliver your best. If you're not filling your body with healthy foods and water and positivity, it's going to be a lot harder for you to radiate that to others. I know we all want to be able to deliver 100% both at work and at home right now, and that starts with us. Take care of yourself, and you'll find it a lot more manageable to take care of the most important people and things around you. So that is it. I am so excited to take some questions in a few minutes, but I did want to share my website here, which is www.mamaworkit.com. You can subscribe for free, and I'd love to keep in touch. And you can also check me out on social media on Instagram and Facebook at the handle @LetMamaWorkIt. So I will stop.
That was awesome. Okay, it's a lot of notes, and I feel like I have a few questions.
Yeah.
Other questions. Somehow I just lost, when you like lose the Zoom window, I don't know where I went. Like, okay, whatever. So what I want to know is, you talk about self-care, and I totally appreciate that. But in taking care of yourself, a lot of people, and I know some people who have been on this call feel the same, who are participating feel the same way. It's hard, you're saying give yourself a break and prioritize things. Do you think self-care is a non-negotiable? Should that be part of the non-negotiables in the day? Or is that something that's like, how do you prioritize that?
I absolutely think it is a non-negotiable. I didn't always feel this way. So this was a revelation to me, and this didn't happen during the pandemic, thankfully, but if it's not a priority to you, I hope you make it one now. And I hope the pandemic does that for you. So I'll just talk a little bit about it. And the first thing I'll say is you need to decide what self-care even means to you, because it means a lot of different things to different people. For some, it's doing something for your body, like working out or taking a bath or a face mask or mani-pedi or whatever it is. And for others, maybe that's connecting with a friend, either virtually or in person, if circumstances allow. And for some, it's literally just being alone in silence if you've been, cooped up in your house with your whole family for 8 months and haven't had a quiet minute. So, figure out what that means to you. What fills your cup? What's going to make you feel like your whole self again? And then, yes, prioritize. And I'm just going to tell you like a quick personal story about this, because if I can do this, I think you can do it. I really believe that. So as Jenny said, as I said, I have 4 small kids. I have a full-time job. I have a business. And this year I wanted to focus on my health and endurance and start running again. And then this pandemic hit, and it really messed with my routine, my emotions, my sanity, my childcare. Like, it created upheaval in my home. But I made it a priority. Like, I got a treadmill. I figured out where I could fit in, training and running. And this past weekend, I ran 8 miles. I swear to God, I didn't even think that was possible. Like, I'm making it happen, you guys. And I know that you can do the same thing if you just make it a priority in your life.
First of all, I want to tell everybody, if you have questions, you can put it into the Q&A, and I'm going to queue up all the questions. That's the easiest way to do it. But we have some here, so I'm just going to start talking about them. And I have lots of questions from what we talked about today. But so the non-negotiable thing, I thought that was really good. And I definitely think that when you mentioned changing your mindset, because I talk about that a lot when I hear people who are really down, and it's like, well, this is such a bummer. I'm like, okay, well, how do you reframe that into this is a really big positive? What are the things that you're getting out of this? How do you not let it get you down and turn it into a big adventure instead of turning it into something that's like a misery? Because then everything feels horrible instead of It's just like, okay, we're going to wake up and tell a different story, change the narrative. And is that something you have to work on every day?
Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't come easy some days. I think the more you do it, it's kind of like strengthening that muscle. So do it, do it, do it, practice it, practice the mantra, get to versus have to has been really awesome in my life to just kind of use that out loud terminology and say it that way. Um, focusing on things you're grateful for every day, even if it's just one small thing, right? Like if you were, for example, if you were someone who was commuting before the pandemic and now you're working from home, are you grateful for the fact that you have those hours now to spend with your family? I know you're spending a lot of time with your family right now, but are you grateful that you don't have to, get on public transportation or sit in traffic or, just something small like that? It could be that simple.
The other thing I thought about a lot when you were talking was the planning aspect of it, because for so many working women, especially, so much time and effort goes into like setting up longer term plans and making sure that like things are covered and you know what it's going to look like, X days out, or when the vacations are, or your kids after school schedules, because then there's like control aspect of you then being able to know how to fit yourself into that. And when you take that away, something I've found really helpful is just coming to terms with like shorter time horizons. And and you have to like really keep to it, because even in this moment where people are like, well, what are you going to do for Thanksgiving? What are your plans for winter break? And in past years, I would have known, 6, 8 months before everything would have been done, plans, booked. So that way it's like a relief because you already knew what was coming. And I'm like, I don't even know, like next week. And you say that it's good to set a plan. And sometimes I think like there's a hard line now between like just deciding I'm not going to have a plan, just going to go with it, and then trying to create some semblance of like an outline of maybe how things could go in a few different ways.
Yeah, I know. I'm a planner too, so I totally empathize.
Women are planners. You can't not
Yeah,
have kids.
yeah, I empathize with that. I guess inadvertently, I have started to shorten that horizon, and it's just become more of my norm in that way. So yeah, I'm not planning, a vacation a year out. I'm not planning things so far ahead because I do see the volatility that we're all dealing with right now. So I've come to terms with that in a sense, but I don't think the planning should stop in that way. Like, I think you can plan smaller scale things to maintain that level of control that we all crave so much, So I think you can plan even just your next day. What are the 3 things I want to focus on? Or, for the next month, what is something that I want to put my energy into? And then again, we have to accept that situation that things could go out of our hands. There could be, more restrictions put into place. The school could close or reopen or whatever, that means in your life. But I wouldn't necessarily just kind of like throw my hands up in the air and say, stop with the planning, because I think that will probably make us feel like that time in March, right? When it all kind of hit and the lockdown went and we were just like, and just kind of like binge watching Netflix. What was that show I started watching at the beginning of Tiger King? Tiger King. Yeah. Yeah.
And then just in terms of work, I think this is, to get to like, the real nuts and bolts of the second shift, because we've seen in our own member community, and I'm sure you hear this in your networks, that women are having a really hard time because you can't plan and because you've had to make your time horizon so much shorter. It means that it's very hard to think about what your job opportunities are going to be like. And it's one thing if you have a full-time job and this is what you're doing and you just can sort of ride that out. It's a different thing if you're a consultant or you're looking for a job, because how do you know what it's going to look like in 2 months or a month, if you can take a job, if you can take a project? if you don't even know what your schedule looks like, or if your kids are going to be in school, or if you have childcare, it's, it's almost like paralyzing. And
Totally.
seen that I know we've put out the surveys, we've seen that within our member community, far fewer women who are signing up to be members of the second shift because they're not confident in their ability to look for a job. People who are stepping out of the workforce, people who aren't looking for full-time work right now because they don't know if they can commit to a full-time job. They don't know how long this thing is going to go.
Yeah, totally. It's very unsettling, and I empathize 100%. The thing that I'll say is that if looking for a new role is something that you want to do, I would not let the pandemic stop you. I would say there is never going to be a perfect time to start something new. So why not just go for it and ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? That they hire you and you're not able to fulfill your role? Well, have you made things work before when you've faced a challenge like that? You can probably make them work again. I think women especially tend to not necessarily kind of go into situations with that level of confidence, while maybe men do. We're always kind of worried about the what ifs. And that's what I would say. Like, ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? You've made things work before. You can maybe make them work again. Maybe ask during the interview process to learn more about that company's culture and expectations and how they're managing employees and their flexibility during COVID. And, we're all in this together. The whole world is dealing with this problem. So you're not the only person who's facing this challenge. And I think you'll be surprised that there are a lot of companies out there that are being really understanding of the situations that we're in. So, you're not going to know unless you try. So why not try it?
I actually heard a really good story yesterday about somebody I know who was in recruiting, and obviously recruiting is just like real hard hit right now, and there's not a lot of career stability. So she was looking for an in-house job, but she's moved out of New York in this time period. And so that was limiting her thinking, limiting where she could apply and what kind of job she could apply for. But she wound up applying for a job in a company that had been successful during this period of time in media, got a full-time job, and they no longer require her to be in New York. So now all of a sudden she gets to get this full-time job that she wants. The company is much more flexible than they would have been. And it turns out the woman she's working for used to work in New York and now moved full-time to Atlanta. So she's not even coming back. And that's how that company's adapted. And, while we see the need and the fear so much right now with the working women who are overwhelmed, we're also really happy because Gina and I, Kemp, we've been pushing for so many years for companies to adapt a much more flexible mindset about hiring. And so that's just an example of seeing that it does happen, that it is happening, that geographical limitations are not going to be a bias anymore, and that hopefully this mentality is going to translate into when the economy picks up, and it's really going to be a boon for working women. So as long as we can kind of like keep going right now and then rise into it as the world changes, we're going to come out the other side into a place that we have been pushing for a really long time and hoping to see. So that makes me really hopeful.
That's a great story. Yeah.
Okay, I got a question. I feel like the uncertain world we live in, it's challenging and easy to get distracted daily with work, news, childcare, etc. How do you stay focused on the important things and stay positive? It's a very good question, Danielle, because I feel like my brain is mush and I often can't focus on anything. It's only getting worse.
Yes, agree. Firstly, I am going to shock you right now, but I don't have cable. So I don't watch the news regularly. I got rid of cable way before the pandemic.
I mean, I watch the news. I read Twitter in like an obsessive fashion, and that's
So I don't watch the news regularly in my home. I mean, of course, I have apps and things on my phone that I check, here and there, but I can limit that. It's not like it's just on in the background on my TV all the time and things like that. So I have a little more control over that. So That's one thing. The second thing is, I'm pretty intentional. So when I get a free half an hour or 5 minutes, most people, and again, I'm guilty of this, but I've kind of come to terms and made some changes. But most people, what do? They pick up their phone and they scroll, right? During that free time that they get. And oftentimes what you see are not positive things when you're scrolling, especially in the world we're living in right now. So I make it more of an intention that when I get those free few minutes or that free half hour, that I go to something that I want to focus on that's kind of giving me more positivity into my life, whether that's, a project I'm working on or something I want to do with one of my kids more one-on-one, like reading to them or spending time playing something fun, or just time for me, right? Like something for my own self-care. So I try not to fill my free minutes with things that are, bringing me down in that way.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Because if we don't, I feel like I would love for you just to tell us where about the planner and the work you're doing. And I know you're doing some one-on-one coaching, and then wrap it up and let everyone use the extra free minutes to do something that's for them.
Yes. Yeah. So
Tell us,
yeah,
tell us about that.
sure. So I mentioned the journal planner. I have one right here. This is my proof copy.
How do we get that?
This is on Amazon right now.
Oh, okay, cool.
And you can prime it so it can be at your house in 2 days.
Is that something that you'd be interested in doing? Some like, having our members be able to, we could promo it in the newsletter or something.
Yeah, totally. So
I'm going to put
this,
information on on our blog when we post this. I'll link to that so people can figure out how to get it.
awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So this is kind of like a nightly ritual. It is a journal planner. It's called Word to Your Mother, a Mama's Guide to Journal Today and Slay Tomorrow. And it takes no more than 10 to 15 minutes every night. And it's just a way to sort of reflect on your day, think about some of the things you really did well that day, and think about a few things that you want to focus your energy and intention on the next day. And it does include some self-care stuff, so you can easily prioritize it using the journal planner. And what I like about it is, as somebody like you, Jenny, who, is a planner, likes to kind of stay organized and plan ahead. I've tried a lot of different ones out there, and I think they're all great in their own way, but they just didn't work for me. Like some were just too complicated, too lengthy. I don't have time for that. Right? Like I need something quick and easy and simple. And to me, this, 10 to 15 minutes every night, I can do that. And I can not be looking at my phone during that time. So I'm really focusing my energy on that positive exercise.
I'm into it. I think it's a really good practice. And, a lot of the things that getting into habits and building in things into a routine really takes practice, but also then it just feels good after a while once you get into that routine. Okay, cool. That's great. I love that. And your blog, let's just plug it again.
Yeah. So the website is mamaworkit.com. So I have a lot of free resources on there. I write on the blog regularly. I do coaching and mentorship with moms who are just super busy and frazzled and can't just feel like they can't get it together, right? And I help them with goal strategy and time management and all that sort of stuff. So you can check all that out on the website. I'd love to have you. If you subscribe, I will send you my morning Mama Glamma free tips. So feel free to do that. It's free to subscribe, and I'd love to keep in touch in that way.
All right. Well, I just want to say how much I love and appreciate our second shift members, because the fact that you are just like an emblematic of like all of these women who are balancing so much, and instead of feeling overwhelmed, you just do more. And you're willing to put yourself out there, and you're willing to make the time to do things like this. I mean, you have 4 little kids, you have a full-time job, you have a side job, you're writing books, you learned how to run, you're running 8 miles. You're making me have a complex a little bit, but
No.
but I feel like you're really, I really appreciate the positivity, the creativity, and just the way in which people who are baller women just don't let anything get in their way, and, change, like flip the script and make space for themselves. And you are, a great example. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for everyone who came and participated in this. Again, we're going to put this up on the blog, so people will be able to spread it around and share it. And I really learned a lot, and I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Take care. Bye, everybody.